Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Booker, literary aviatrix, and I am excited to talk with the author of a new book launching on February 24th, 2026, Why Fly? Seeking Awe, Healing, and Our True Selves in the Sky. This book will be the Aviatrix Book Club discussion book for April. I want to encourage everyone to go to my website and pre-order the book. Pre-orders help boost sales. So jump in there on bookshop.org or Amazon and pre-order your book, Why Fly? Seeking Awe, Healing, and Our True Selves in the Sky. Fewer than 10% of pilots and aircraft mechanics are women. These are their stories of tenacity, adventure, and courage. Stories with the power to inspire, heal, and connect. Welcome to the Literary Aviatrix community, where we leverage the power of story to build and celebrate our community and inspire the next generation of aviation. Caroline Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Liz. I'm really excited to be here.
I am so excited for you to be here too. And remind me your agent's name or your PR person's name.
Amanda Dissinger, she's great.
She's a two-time winner with you and me. She came to me with Spitfires last year. That was an awesome interview. And I don't know if she told you, but when I got this email from her, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
You did.
Thank you. This
You were
is
so nice.
wonderful.
You were
Yeah.
so.
No, I was so excited just about the premise of the book. And for anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it, and if we're going to release this before it's launched, most people will not. So can you give us a synopsis of the book?
Well, the book is called Why Fly? And it basically sets out to answer that question. Or actually, there's no question mark on the cover on purpose. It's not why fly? It's not, it's kind of a statement. So I go about using history, sociology, psychology, the physics of flight, my own personal experiences, talking about why flight is so important for us each individually as humans. Um, and then the spine of the book really is how I got obsessed with flight, because I have been flying since I was 20, but I was never completely bowled over by it. I loved it, but I wasn't obsessed, I guess it would be the word. And then I began to fly a gyrocopter, and my true love of flight took hold, and it did coincide with the dissolution of my marriage. So it's probably no surprise that I think, try to hook on to something that we can be good at or have a relationship with when when another very important relationship is dissolving.
Well, I have to say that I'm so excited about this book for so many reasons. So Amanda sent it to me. I will be totally upfront and say that I have not read the whole book from cover to cover. During just based on my work schedule and everything, I couldn't give it the time that it deserved. But I had read enough because I got an advanced reader copy to know that I wanted it to be on the discussion list for the Aviatrix Book Club this year, because you're bringing us all several new types of flying that we have not featured in the book club, some of which I'm really kind of curious about. I'm kind of, working my way through my aviation curiosity, and you're definitely hitting on a major point of curiosity with me. So I can't wait to talk about the gyrocopter. And
The
also,
rotorcraft to pilot yourself.
yeah, exactly. I'm so curious about this thing. And then also this glider thing that you call trike. I'm fascinated with that. So there's so much interesting aviation stuff in here, but you're also bringing us an interesting format. It's I can point to a few books that we've read that are similar in some ways. There was one on soaring from a woman who was going through breast cancer, and going through that journey and connecting with gliding, soaring, like sailplanes. And so there were some similarities with that, but what you do more of and better, in my opinion, in this book is weaving this sort of broader perspective of aviation history and how it works, so that a layperson gets introduced to the topic in many different from many different angles. So there are hints of Amelia Earhart's The Fun of It in this book, where you're kind of explaining a whole bunch of stuff about aviation to the reader. But what she doesn't have in that is the emotional human relationship aspect that you're going through. So this journey of using flight as a metaphor for navigating a relationship, and that, it takes off. Hopefully it soars for a while, and then maybe there are some emergencies you got to deal with, and then eventually you land sometimes. So I just thought that it just is a really unique piece of work. There's a lot in it that I'm working on, making available to readers through the book that I'm working on, concerning women's aviation history, which I find obviously endlessly fascinating. So I would love to start back things up to how you got into flying. Before you do that, tell me all of the different aircraft that you have flown.
Yeah, this book is different, I think, because it is really mostly about experimental aircraft, because that's really what I know about. So I learned on a Cessna 150, 172 back in 1982, 81, 82. I think it took me a little while. I was in college at the time. Then, but it didn't really satisfy my sense of adventure. So I switched to paragliders, which were new at the time. It was the 1980s, the end of the 80s, and the instructors were all hang glider pilots who thought they knew how to fly paragliders, which maybe they did, but often they didn't know how to teach them that well. Uh,
So I'm going to ask you also to describe the craft.
Sorry, thank you.
No, yeah, no, just even for me, because all of these little nuances in the language when I hear, glider, does it look like? What does it feel like?
Paraglider basically looks like a parachute, but instead of just sort of like a parachute kind of bringing you down, you can actually fly. It's shaped like a wing. So we do fly off cliffs. We fly off a lot of the same things hang gliders do. We're not quite as cool as hang gliders, but hang gliders would look at us and go, "Oh my God, you'd never find us under a bed sheet like that." So, and we would watch the hang gliders learning to fly and crashing on landing all the time. So we'd be like, we're not going to fly that." So I flew that for a couple decades, maybe 15 years. But it's foot launched, and you're really privy to the wind, and the paraglider itself is so light, because it is just basically a piece of cloth under which you dangle as a human, that that your wind window was very narrow. So we did a lot of what we called para waiting, and so finally I decided to go back to powered flight, but I didn't want to be in a fixed wing because it felt too enclosed for me, so I found something, called a weight shift trike, which is basically a hang glider under which a go-kart hangs, and I flew that for about 20 years, maybe? I'm getting my math all wrong, 15 years, 20 years? But, the winds have really changed, and those of us in very light aircraft can feel that, and the window there started to get narrower and narrower too for flight, so I switched to something called a gyro.
And where are you flying? Like, what part of the country are you flying in?
California, Northern California, but
Okay.
I paraglided all around the world. I mean, not a lot. Mexico, Brazil, lots of places in California. Um,
So in what years were you doing this paragliding?
it was the '80s, like '86 maybe,
Okay.
uh, to 2002.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
excuse me, till the night till the yeah, no, 2000 no, I picked up, weight shift trikes in 2000.
That's so great. So I was flying helicopters out of SFO, um, and flying past the little patch on the coast there where all the paragliders were,
You
and
saw me, I'm sure.
trying not to hit you.
Yeah.
Hoping that I see you, first of all, and yeah, trying not to hit you. That's really cool. And
Yeah,
so
there's something about open cockpit flight that really appeals to me. Like many of the historical figures I talk about in the book, I wanted to fly like a bird, and that seemed like the best way.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wanna get more into the gyrocopter. So that's the collection of aircraft that you've flown, which I find super fascinating, and I wanna try all of those things. Um, how did you get into flying and why? And then, what professionally or ratings-wise, what did you pursue and achieve and why?
So I got into flying because I think honestly, because Amelia Earhart was pretty much the only female adventurer I had heard about when I was a kid, and I wanted adventure in my life. And so seeing this woman doing that made flying possible. As long as, flying was still considered pretty expensive then. But I got a job. So then a friend of mine who was flying, and he was about my age, he was just a year older, took me up in a plane. And of course, he tried to impress me by basically making me sick by doing everything way too, but I was still intrigued. And so I began to take lessons. First, I had a job as a newspaper photographer. I must have been, I think it was 19 in Kansas, and just flew off a grass field for a little bit and then went to school. I was going to Georgetown at the time and flew in Leesburg and got just my private pilot license there.
And so most of the aircraft that you're flying now are experimental, and you can do this with a sport pilot car.
Yeah, well, at the time, I mean, paragliding, you could do it with nothing. I mean,
Ah,
basically, there were people who didn't take any lessons at all. There was a certification system that eventually, came into play, and I can't really quite remember it, but the same thing happened with weight shift trikes. I mean, it was initially there was no certification. The FAA didn't, as I say in the book, they basically were like, we're kind of gonna ignore this, and put it in a dusty cabinet until we wanna deal with it, and of course, then they did, they instituted the sport pilot. But for a while there was no we didn't have to learn anything.
that's fascinating to me. Yeah. And the fact that you can fly a gyrocopter. So let's talk about this gyrocopter. Tell me what that's like.
I mean, when I first saw one, I thought, "That thing doesn't fly." I mean, it looks like a helicopter. I think for people who've seen it, it's just a tiny 1 or 2 seater. It's basically a go-kart underneath a rotor blade, and, I really honestly thought that that's not gonna fly. I don't know, that looks weird. And but the guy who was next to me in his hangar, Paul Hollingworth, he flew trikes, but he too was like, "This is no fun anymore. We're getting kicked around by turbulence so much, and we have to get up earlier and earlier in order to avoid these incredible winds that were starting." I saw them about 25 years ago. Usually we could get glass off in the evenings and we can get a really calm morning flight. And it started to be such that I would call the AWOS and it would say, it's already 8 miles an hour, which isn't a lot, but it meant that if that's what's happening before the sun has risen, it's going to
Yeah.
be kicking us around. And Paul kind of got tired of that and he looked into gyrocopters. And one day he told me, "Oh, I just flew to South Lake Tahoe." And I was like, "And back in a day." And I said, "What? How could you do that?" Because I was used to this, this wing loading that wouldn't allow that kind of thing. You'd get kicked around in the middle of the day and it would be uncontrollable flight. And and then he said, "Oh yeah, well, in the gyro you can fly any time of day." And I thought, "Really?" And so then I started to be curious about it.
And so describe it. I mean, describe. So the thing that got me was when you talked about, I highlighted some other things in the book that are interesting to me. Now, you talked about the fact that and I need to go back to my rotary wing aerodynamics for this, but you talked about basically auto rotation, but the fact that you can essentially come into a hover full load on the rotor and it's not going to stop.
Not
Like,
a hover, we can't hover.
well, obviously, but I'm saying like you can fully load the rotor with no forward motion, which is basically how we would get in a hover, but you're not gonna like what engine is spinning this rotor? This is like, help me with
I
this.
Well, in the old days, the engine that spun the rotor initially was a human, like, who threw it around.
Right.
And then but we do have what we call a pre-rotation, so we can pre-rotate, and then as we're going down the runway, we just let go of the pre-rotator and let the forward motion do the work, and so we're always in auto rotation when we're flying all the way until we land and stop.
But you can't, like, okay, so let me put it this way. If I shut down my engine in a helicopter
Mhm.
and now my rotor is still spinning,
Yep.
as long as I don't fully load it and remove the forward motion momentum so that there's wing flow air flowing over the wings, over the
You have to keep
rotors.
doing that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to fall out of the sky like a rock, and the way you described it is that you can't really do that in this thing.
Well, the gyrocopters don't stall, and there's some complicated, physics about that.
Yeah, the rotor doesn't stall, like, that just is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and if we lose our engine, which is not a great situation for us either, we just have to just drop the nose and keep a certain airspeed, and we're in controllable flight.
Okay,
Just
now
like
I'm
you
back
do,
on
I
okay,
think.
now I'm back on track. So you do have an engine
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have an engine that
spinning
keeps
the
us
rotor.
in forward motion, which will
Mhm.
keep the rotor spinning. It's very
That engine is powering a rotor at the back of the craft,
Yeah,
yes?
it's a propeller, yes,
The
sorry.
propeller, okay.
Yes.
See, I like
Here's the thing about me, Liz. I am not a professional pilot. I am an
Oh, that's okay.
enthusiastic pilot, and so flight feels like a miracle to me all the time, and I write about that. It
Yeah.
feels miraculous to me most of the time,
Well, I
and so
think what it is, though, like, when you fly a thing, it's natural once you've mastered it, it's natural to fly it, and so it all makes sense to you. But to somebody who has never flown a thing like that, it's so unusual to me and I haven't studied the aerodynamics of it that I have all these dumb questions, and I don't mind that they're dumb questions because this is how we learn. I'm just doing it publicly in front of my
not
aviation
dumb
audience.
questions. They're not. They're none of them.
Sorry about that to everybody out there for that painful aerodynamics lesson for Liz Booker, but she wants
No,
to go
no.
fly one of these things. So, Caroline,
No,
thank
thank
you.
you for asking me these questions. This book is written for when I conceived of this book, I thought of it for non-pilots
Yeah,
because I'm not really, there's so many incredibly knowledgeable pilots. I have maybe and again, I don't have all my hours totaled because I didn't total up my paragliding hours, but I would say I have about 1,200 hours total, maybe.
that's impressive.
Is it though?
I think so.
oh, well,
For
thank you.
recreational flying?
I'm also 62.
Well, I
Full
know.
year flying.
Yeah,
Weird things, very weird things.
weird things that you don't go, aren't necessarily long distance or,
They're not. Yes.
you're getting an hour or 2 at a time, just like
Yes.
I did.
Yep.
So, yeah. No, it's fascinating. So, let's back things up. We talked a lot about flying. I wanna talk about you and your upbringing, your education. Who are you? And why do you have all these fantastic books that I'm dying to read now, and I wish I had had time to read before I got to this interview? Tell me about you, and then tell me about all these other books.
Well, the salient facts about me is that I'm from the East Coast. I think I'm a consummate New Englander. I'm pretty practical and have been accused of not being being able to process emotions well. Uh, I have an identical twin sister who I adore. She is actually, and I have a younger brother who is also amazing. And both my siblings, I think, have really shaped me. They're both just really good people and very successful. My twin sister is actually a very successful actress, which was always presented weird things because we look alike. And I eventually became a firefighter for San Francisco for 14 years, almost 14 years. Back when women were just starting out in the fire department. Ironically, my sister, my twin at the same time, got a TV job on Baywatch, and she was on Baywatch during the huge years, with Pamela Anderson when it was the most watched show in the world. But of course, the big irony for us twins is that when you're a lifeguard in LA, which is what she was playing on TV, you're actually part of the fire department.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
fun
we're both
fact.
firefighters at the
Oh
same
my
time.
gosh, that is super cool. So fun fact, so yeah, I was stationed in San Francisco for 4 years and I flew up there. My last actual flying tour was as the chief pilot in Los Angeles. Now, Baywatch was only a TV show to me. And not one that I watched necessarily. I mean, I knew basically what it was about, but what I did not understand was the professionalism of the LA County lifeguards. I had no idea, and they are the real deal. So that is really cool that she got to work on that show. And how fun is
And
that?
she's an amazing swimmer, and she's actually saved people's lives
That's
since in the
awesome.
water.
Oh my gosh, how
Yeah,
cool is that?
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's cool. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I my twin is amazing, my younger brother's amazing, he's a big, animal, rescuer, and both of them, just are guiding lights for me. I think we always just want I think a lot of people feel peer pressure from other people. I think we felt it a little bit from our siblings, like, we just wanted to impress I wanted to impress my twin sister, frankly, and, so the but I both of us grew up in the country with the sort of free range parenting upbringing where we would just go outside and play until dark and come back. So there's a lot of creative play there. There was a lot of, building of forts and riding of bikes, and so we were always very active. And I wanted a life of adventure, and I would read National Geographic that came to our house, and I would read it voraciously for these tales of people who would go all around the world doing amazing things. Of course, they were mostly men, but they became my role models, with the exception, of course, of Amelia Earhart, who I really do credit, as well as Henry LeBom, who took me up in my first plane flight, as wanting to be a pilot.
That's incredible.
And so see, I really wanted to be a so I wanted to have a job that allowed me to have adventures and be paid for it, and so I actually was at Georgetown for a couple years, but I transferred to Stanford, and I became uh, wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. So that was kind of this idea of, like, journalism, documentary film, blah, blah, and then I became a firefighter. So um I actually did, get a job where you get paid for adventures, and
So did you graduate from Stanford and become a firefighter?
it wasn't that close, but yes, it was a little bit of a circuitous route. I was 26 when I became a firefighter, so I had lots of jobs before then.
Yeah.
But I didn't
Wow.
want a desk job, and I
Okay.
fell into firefighting, which, for a lot of people who really that's their dream. It couldn't have been my dream because, there were no female firefighters. So for me, I didn't even think that was something that was possible. So in my defense, it's only because I know people dream as kids and they wanna be firefighters, and it's really hard to get into. And I was lucky enough to be able to be a firefighter for a big city and have a lot of adventures. And I wrote about that. That was my first book.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say there's a memoir about it. I'm gonna go read that, and I'm fascinated, by that experience, but, I enlisted in the Coast Guard first, so I was doing some dirty jobs and some physical and manual labor before I became an officer, so very similarly, I was one of a very few and doing dirty jobs that most women didn't do, so I'm super
One of the
excited
few
to read it.
helicopter pilots, I assume.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, by the time I became an officer and a pilot, we were still only 8% of the 1,200 pilots in the Coast Guard, but there had been plenty who had gone before me by the time I came along because I didn't wing
Good,
until
good. You don't want I mean, being the
1995.
first is hard. I don't consider myself the first because the first to me are the first 5 women who came in '87. I came in '89, so there were 14 women. So I was the 15th. But there were 1,500 men, so we
And
never
yeah, and did you have any of them at your station? Like, yeah, you were the only one.
usually didn't see anybody for unless there was a big fire, and then you'd wave over the scrum, "Hey."
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So that's basically how it was for us too. There may have been a few of us at that point, but we were spread around, and so we were lucky to be stationed with 1 or 2. So, even that far into it. So that's incredible that you had that experience.
But yeah,
So
I do wanna say, like, being a firefighter was really made me a better person. I mean, to, uh you get to insert yourself into someone's life who you would never otherwise. I mean, it's usually the most intimate time for them. They're terrified, they're hurt, their house is burning, whatever it is. So it was a real privilege, and I learned so much. And the people I work with, the mostly men that I work with, so many of them were brave and just good people. And so I was kind of coming of age was to be for me to be a firefighter.
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's a different perspective because, I would liken what I did to being the ambulance driver. So I show up with the piece of equipment to carry the patient, and so it's definitely intersecting with one of their worst days, but I personally had very little interaction with them, and so that's like an aspect of the experience that I'm always exploring and figuring out how that's gonna play into my writing as well, so that's really interesting. And then what did you do after being a firefighter?
I became a writer. It was all I knew how to do except CPR. I don't really know how to do anything. I had fallen in a fire and just had these multiple surgeries. I probably had 8 knee surgeries. I eventually got my knee replaced at a tender age of 40.
Oh,
Yeah, so and I had to, go through like 2 years of pretty deep depression because I didn't think being a firefighter was my identity at all. I was I had a lot of other things that I did but it was really hard to leave that job. So then I didn't know how to do anything except write. I actually honestly didn't really know how to write. I was a classic new writer where you try to write a beautiful sentence and you realize you're not really saying anything. Now, my advice to writers now is you got to figure out what you want to say. And
yeah.
it's so hard to know what you want to say that I just want you to write like see Jane run, and then later make it beautiful. But if you
Yeah.
don't know what you want to say, then but that took years of writing. So
And so tell us about this laundry list of books. They look so fun. Tell me about all of them.
yeah, I mean, they're actually very different, but funnily enough, flying is in, like, half of them without even noticing it. So I did write a memoir about being a firefighter, and I was actually still a firefighter when that came out. And then when I retired, I wrote a couple books that just got rejected. Uh, and then finally oh, no, that's not what happened. I couldn't finish a book, which was unusual for me. And I was like, "You know what? The next book I just am gonna finish. It could be terrible, but stop putting away something halfway and saying no." So just write all the way through because I realized it was one of those things that if you realize this is becoming a little bit of a pathology, you've gotta overcome it by it's like if you're in a relationship and all your relationships end at 3 months, I say push through to 6 months no matter who it is because you
Yeah.
gotta break this sort of rhythm. And so I finished the book and it actually got published. It's my only novel. I'm really proud of it, but it begins with a Japanese Zero crashing into a small Hawaiian island, and it's based on a true story.
Yeah.
It's called East Wind Rain. That
East
was a
Wind Rain. Okay, so the
East
firefighting one is
Wind Rain.
your firefighting memoir. I'm looking at your website. It's carolinepall.com. And Fighting Fire is your memoir. And then you got this East Wind Rain that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it is actually that story is unbelievable. I mean, I would rewrite it if I could because I'm now, 20 years past the publication date. That came out in like 2006.
Yeah.
Then yeah, and so then I have 8 books total
Yeah.
published.
So
And my
tell me, there are a couple that I get excited about. The Gutsy Girl is one of them. Tell me about that one.
yeah, that came out in 2016. It really hit a nerve. It's called The Gutsy Girl: Escapades for Your Life of Epic Adventure, and it's aimed at girls. The boys love it too. And the idea is to, encourage them to, learn how to be brave. Because I feel very strongly that we as girls are taught to be scared while boys are taught to be brave. And this really became clear when I was a firefighter. Even with fellow female firefighters, just a habit to, well, first of all, people will ask you all the time if you're scared. Were you scared at that fire? And, like, the answer is, "Yeah, duh, of course we all are," but they never ask men that, and I would
Right,
never answer that question, because for me, first of all, I often wasn't scared, which is problematic, but also, that's not the an interesting question. I mean, please ask me about the huge raging fire that I just ran through, or,
right,
who I pulled out, or what cat I found under the bed, and so I noticed that people would not ask men that, and it became clear that we teach our girls to be scared because we think it protects them. And I get that, the world looks scary for girls, so let's, teach them not to walk down that dark alley to be scared of it and not talk to strangers and be scared of that. But in fact, when we teach girls to be scared, we're not protecting them
right.
because
You're
they
not preparing
offload.
them.
No, they'll offload their agency. They don't find the confidence that boys find by doing brave things, by risky play, by pushing comfort zones. And I also saw that girls got rewarded for being scared. Like, it was kind of cute when they were scared, they scream, and if boys did that, I mean, their parents would be worried for them. And so I wrote this book hoping mostly really for, I mean, the idea was it's for girls, but I wanted parents to understand that asking girls to go out of their comfort zone is super important. So it's just a list of my misadventures. It's stories of my misadventures, of which sadly there are many in various outdoor things like, sea kayaking. And I was a whitewater rafter was part of a team that went around the world doing first descents. Um, and I was on Denali for 2 summers, and so there was this little misadventure there. So I write about my misadventures because first of all, it's fun to hear about misadventures, but also there's always a lesson in there. And so it's written um, with humor, and also my lovely ex-wife, who's of whom I am trying to recover from in Why Fly, illustrated it, and she's an amazing illustrator.
Oh,
Yeah, so we did that book together. Um,
that's cool.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so that became a New York Times bestseller for.
That's incredible. Good
Yeah,
for
I know,
you.
I
That's
know.
amazing.
I mean, that's like a dream come true for writers, as you know.
Absolutely.
It's like a lucky zeitgeist, sort of a something happened where it anyway. So yeah, I'm proud of that book, and I did actually recently run into a young woman who had that book as a kid, and she said, "Oh, I used to reread that all the time. I must have read it like 20 times." She just reread it, she told me. Yeah,
That's
it was
super
really,
cool.
yeah.
There's another one, I mean, there are a couple more I wanna talk about. There's one, that looks like it might be for younger readers. You Are Mighty. Tell us
Yes.
about this. Yeah.
That's also illustrated, but it's a book about getting kids to be civically involved. So it basically uses examples from real life kids as templates for kids to use if they want to be civically involved. It's not a partisan book. It's really about picking something you believe in, because I feel like as a kid that was something that really motivated me. Like, I believed strongly in, like, no pollution. Somehow litter was always, like, something that as a kid I was just passionate about a clean world, and that, of course, means I've become, an environmentalist. But so for kids, I think having something and then acting on it is so powerful, and so that gives them a template for that.
Yeah, it gives them agency, real agency in the big, wide, real world. I
Yes.
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. And then tell me about Tough Broad.
Yeah, I love that. That came out That's my most recent book that's been published because Wi-Fi is not out yet. Um, but it's called Tough Broad: From Birdwatching to Base Jumping, How Outdoor Adventure Improves Our Lives as We Age. This is the paperback. And this was actually written as I was in my later 50s. looking around and seeing that there were no women doing the things that I like to do. So, specifically, I was surfing, and I'm not a good surfer. And by the way, I'm not really that good at a lot of things, but I'm dogged, and I have friends who are better than me who will take me out on adventures. So I have been around the world with people who, luckily, and I'm just like a reliable teammate, so that's good enough. So but I was surfing in winter swell, and I'm not a good surfer, like I said, but I'm a good paddler. And I was like, a lot of women should be out here. They could do something with these waves. But instead, it was me and a lot of men who were my age, 55, I think I was, and older. I mean, up to 70.
Good.
And
Yeah.
yeah, great. It was great for them. But I started wondering, like, what's my future like?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to pull back on the adventures that I did? I mean, I rode an electric skateboard. I was a surfer. I got on my bike. I was obviously a pilot. And so I decided to look into the science and the research behind getting outside as we age and whether it was good for us or not. And of course, it turns out that it's good for us on a biological level, a mental level, on all the levels. But it was cool because I decided to sort of highlight the science through an adventure. So I would go, I found women such as, the wave chasers down in San Diego, who are a bunch of women, mostly in their 60s and 70s and 80s, who boogie board. And I looked down on boogie boarding, to be honest, as a surfer. But when I went down, it was such a fun adventure, and I used the wave chasers, for instance, to highlight the science behind community and
Yeah.
being social.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that book was not just, I'm just proud of it, but it was really fun to write.
Well, like I said, I want to there's part of me that's so excited and grateful that I have the opportunity to interview you before this new book comes out and get to know you this way. There's another part of me though that wished I had more lead time to, immerse myself in all of these books, which they're now all on my list. The one that we haven't, there are two other little ones. Well, there's a little tea book and then The Lost Cat. Tell us real quick about those.
So, a little tea book is written with one of my best friends who's a tea purveyor. So, it's really honestly, I mean, this I'm saying is like for a long time I didn't have a brand because I was writing, You Are Mighty, which is for kids activism, and then a tea book, and then a novel about Hawaii, World War
Yeah.
II. So I love that book, also illustrated by Wendy, and it's just about tea.
Well,
Love
I
switching.
like tea. I'm
Oh, good.
enjoying some tea.
Good, good, good.
Mhm.
And then Lost Cat is actually maybe one of my favorite books that I've written. So of the 8 books, just because it makes me laugh. I mean, I'm not funny in Why Fly, sadly. And but because I think I was not in a funny place when I
Yeah.
was writing it. I wasn't in a terrible place, but I was in the midst of that place. But Lost Cat is actually about an accident, the big accident that I had that I do talk about in the book, and, the recovery, but it's not a book for kids, it's a book for adults because it's about human relationships. Though it is about how, as I devolved on the sofa after recovering from this accident, completely, addled by Vicodin and TV and immobility and getting super depressed, my cat disappeared. And then he came back 5 weeks later. And the crazy person on that couch decided she wanted to figure out where he had gone and why he had betrayed her in her moment of need when she was really going cuckoo. And I went cuckoo, and it's really about following my cat by putting a GPS on his collar, a video on his collar, a note on his collar, going to an animal communicator to try to talk to him. I mean, Liz, I was a crazy person, and it's all true. And it's a very funny book, but it's really about humans. And
Well,
it's
that
very
sounds
short, and you can read it in like half an hour. And I think it's my favorite. And kids love it too, because you can, I mean, because Wendy illustrated it. It's basically a memoir of the two of us. We had just met. And so, it's that sort of wrong. Yeah, so it's my books have taken many different forms.
They all sound fascinating, and you sound like a fascinating person. So this, but that's interesting. So that brings us back to this book.
Yeah.
One of the things, couple of things. This book had me thinking about the ways that I turn or the ways that I have turned to aviation post retirement. So I like to say, like, I knew I wanted to be a pilot when I was 5. This is my original love, my original passion.
Wow,
Um
5. I did not that's
oh yeah, I was all in from the beginning. And
why? How? Did you see a pla
astronauts,
Oh,
astronauts.
astronauts,
And
yeah.
then somebody said you had to be a pilot first. And so then okay, so then I'm like, "Okay, I gotta be a pilot." Well, I took some detours to get there. I have my own circuitous path to things, but when I, ultimately became a pilot in the Coast Guard, there were things I loved about that, a very rewarding mission. There were human dynamics in that structure that I didn't love, and so when I retired from the Coast Guard, I like to say that my relationship with aviation needed therapy. And I retired in 2019, so and went right into COVID, that next spring, and so I didn't get to fly, but I needed if I was gonna write about flying, which is what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted flying in my life, not professionally, I wanted it recreationally in my life, and I wanted to be in the community. That was the impetus behind this whole endeavor, this book club and everything. I started the book club
Thank you for
as a
that.
way to reconnect with aviation. But this past year, I just this book made me reflect on the ways that I turn to, like, when I'm feeling like I am losing touch with my direction or my purpose. Um, and if I'm like this year, I suffered some loss and I turned to aviation as a way of sort of centering myself. And uh, parts of me think it is about having control over something. Parts of it are about your focus needing to be so intensely centered on some what for my brain at this point as an aviator are like very basic but intensely focused tasks. So therefore, you don't have space to think about. You don't have to. You don't can't deal with the thing that in that moment because you're working. Your brain is working on something and it's purposeful and but then there's also the joy of it and those kinds of things. So this book had me reflecting on how flying is healing for me, is a crutch for me, is an escape for me, is a profession for me. It's like so many things for me. And you talk about that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about before we get in sort of the emotional stuff was this mishap that you just talked about that got you on the couch, that you talk about later in the book.
Yeah.
I found the way that you introduced that interesting, that somebody said something to you. Give us more context about this.
Well, I think he saw I was in Outside Magazine, for Tough Broad, and I think he must have seen that. It was, there were photos of me and the gyrocopter, and so I got a letter, an email from somebody, a man, of course, as most of the women will know. There's a lot of I mean, all I know is awesome men in the aviation community, so this came as a shock to me. I have been supported and helped by my fellow male pilots, so but
And you were a female firefighter, so it's not
yeah.
like you haven't been the
I
minority.
respect I have a ton of respect for the way men walk through the world. I think I have a lot to learn from that. I think they have a lot to learn from us too as females, if, just on a general cultural level. But I am definitely can have just really can relate to the way male adventurers are. I mean, and the email was short and to the point. I don't quite remember what it said, but basically, you had an accident, you did this, you did this, you did this. He obviously had looked in my FAA files, and he said, "You should be ashamed to call yourself part of our aviation community?" It was like 3 sentences long.
It's a like, here's what you wrote in the book. It
Tell
says,
me.
expired class 3, talking about your medical and how that person knows that. Okay. No basic med. Okay. NTSB report, deregistered aircraft. Please don't include yourself in our aviation community.
Yeah. And he had not done his homework because I'm a sport pilot, so I need any of those things. I mean, most of those things. And the accident he was correct about, and it remains like one of my most, like humiliating situations. But it was pilot error through and through. And that I use that chapter to talk about what pilot error is. And I kind of I use that in my life. Like I think pilots a pilot error is a way of taking responsibility and accountability for your mishaps, because it's always pilot error. I mean, I
It's
can't even think
not
it's
always.
it's
It's not
pretty
always.
much always.
I
You
will say
can
it's pretty
always
much always human error, whether it's the pilot,
okay.
like, yeah,
I mean, but there's always some accountability, and I'm not
yeah.
trying to place blame. I'm just
No, but I
saying
hear you.
kind of like that framework. It forces one to look at the situation, learn from the situation, take stock. But man, that accident was rough for me. I mean, I did so many things that I should not have done. And, they were all those little things we do, trying to impress someone else, trying to be like ignore a technical issue that I was having because it was just a drag, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with my trike. I could not figure out what was wrong with my wing. And when you're in the experimental, community and pretty early on, I mean, this was 2007 or 8, so it's not that early on in the trike world, but still, it's just an odd permutation, and it's hard to get people to work on your trikes. And I'm actually a certified repair person, but I'm not a good repair person, and I don't love it. It's not where my passion is. My passion is being a bird. Birds don't repair. They're they're great. But I'm not proud of that fact. I have a brain, but the brain isn't really an engineering brain. So I just ignored this flaw that was going on with my wing that made it, honestly, pretty uncontrollable in big winds. And what did I do? Fly in big winds. Because why? Because I thought I could handle it. Why? Because I just had confirmation bias and optimism bias, and I wanted to impress. And I made all the mistakes, all of them. And they seem tiny taken alone, which they are. But put together, they resulted in a stall as I was coming into land. Um, again, should have gone around, but the weather was so bad. But why was I up in it? Oh, because I thought it would get better because the evening was falling and it would get a little glass off. But no, it just got crazier. And yeah, so I augured in. I did try to fly it to the ground, but I don't know exactly what happened. I'm assuming that I stalled or I hit a downdraft. But again, it was like so crazy up there. And when you're flying a hang glider wing with just basically a tiny little weight underneath it, you're just subject to getting tossed around, which I was really used to. I mean, I was used to getting tossed around. That did not freak me out, but I knew I was out of control and with this wing that wasn't tuned correctly.
Yeah.
So thus the accident. But it was good to write about it because I'm so humiliated by it, the series of mistakes I made. That writing about it was actually a good. I dreaded writing about that chapter.
Yeah.
So the irony of that, of course, is that I was new with Wendy. And she was the one I was trying to impress, by the way. I wouldn't let her fly with me, but she flew with my pilot friend, and we both took off at the same time. Of course, he had a wing that was fine. I had a wing that wasn't fine, which I obviously knew because I said, "Yeah, you can't fly with me because of my wing."
Right.
I mean, and but were only knew each other for 6 months, and now I had this bad accident where they said, "I don't know if you're gonna walk again." And I was like, "Oh." And she stuck with me. Thus, we had a wonderful situation for 15 years. And then, of course, the irony is that I write a book about flying, which we're flying. It actually brought us together, I would say, flying or failing to fly. crashing.
Well, I wanna talk about that relationship because that's obviously the impetus behind the book, but before that, I just wanted to say, I really enjoyed the way that you kind of talked about those various decision points as just as a demonstration, somebody else is gonna read this, and then they're gonna find themselves in a moment, and then the little bell is gonna go off. That's the value of telling the story, when you do stupid stuff, when pilots do stupid things, in
Which we
telling the
all do,
story.
and we get away with
Yeah.
it, and we're like, "Oh." I mean, I have been stupid most of my young life. I'm not anymore, but, yeah, but then you get to learn from it, yay, luckily, but or you can try to learn from someone else, so hopefully I will have offered some insight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the way you did that. And I also love the way you kind of opened up with this scene where you're basically making an emergency landing and just kind of talking through what happens in your brain when that kind of an emergency is happening and you're having to deal with it. I thought
You
those
know,
were
the book
really.
does start with an emergency landing. I had to make
Yeah.
my first trike, my first hang glider with a motor, which is called a weight ship trike, because it was made by somebody out of their garage, and but again, I'm not saying it wasn't my fault for maintenance, but I there were things I could not have known about. Anyway, I had to make an emergency landing. I opened with that, and all was well. I have made a couple without, had some couple engine failures because I think in experimentals in the old days, that's just what happened.
And then there's one line in here I just wanna highlight because I just thought it was so funny. First of all, you, taught me what the word where the word mayday comes from, and, I was in the Coast Guard from the time I was 18,
Okay.
uh, and never knew that it was a French verb, m'aider, which was interesting, but in that on the page, help me, yes, m'aider. Yeah, and that would be the formal, right? Vous m'aidez. Okay, so, you're talking about this guy who's telling a story, but I just thought it was a wonderful sort of generalization about pilot stories. He ended up in the water. He was clinging to a wing, then that sank. Then he doggy paddled a little while until a boat arrived. But this is the part that I love. There may have been sharks. There may have been exasperated sighs of a long suffering wife. I can't remember. I do remember laughing and gasping throughout because that is the way flying stories are told, that rat-tat-tat interchange of humor and terror that casts the pilot himself as a dumbass, though a lucky one. Absolutely loved that. I thought that was hilarious. And the good news, well, the news is in some communities, like my community in the Coast Guard, we had a culture of confession. And what you would find is that the more just generally secure human beings would be comfortable with coming in and sharing their stupid stories and, even if it made them look stupid, um, it's important to share those
Like, I
stories.
came from the firefighting world where I was just one of the few women. I would never say if I had done anything wrong. Never.
God, no. No, 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 no,
I
no,
would
because
be
then
judged
it's just
differently.
then you're validating,
I'm not
everybody that
saying I
you.
did anything wrong, okay, but
Right, right, no, of course not, I know, I'm with you. I know exactly what you're saying, I think most of the people who listen to me know exactly what you're talking about. So you're not gonna, because
but
you're
I
in a
do
very
listen.
vulnerable situation, right? You're not secure in that environment. Oh,
Right, but I
yeah.
love listening to other people's, like, when, people come over and they like to tell their stories or their close calls, and I listen closely because I don't wanna
Yeah,
have that
yeah,
call.
because we can all learn from that.
Yeah. The book, by the way, is I did not write it actually, to I think you said you wrote it
Well,
to
I just said the impetus behind it,
impetus. The impetus was not actually, the impetus was
oh,
because I love flight, and I was like, "I wanna
okay.
write about flight." Again, I was just completely became obsessed with flying gyros and just had this newfound love and ardor for it, and thought, "I think that'll be my next book," because people did not understand, and maybe I didn't even understand, so I had to, so I wanted to write it, but I knew that a book just about flight is not. I wanted to write it for non-pilots, and I don't think a book about flight is interesting enough, and I think flight is such a metaphor and so layered, and our motivations are so layered, and there's so many of them that I initially wanted the book to be structured by the reasons why we fly. So escape, you know, focus, poetics, adrenaline, you know, I was gonna do that, and then realize that that was facile, the and the book is structured through one flight. So it begins with a section called pre-flight and then taxi, because I've read flight books and been lost in them.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a really clear structure. So it's pre-flight, taxi, takeoff, flight outbound, inbound, landing. And under those sections is a variety of stories. But the spine, of course, is me flying a gyrocopter and trying to get over, just the dealing with the grief of a good marriage gone that's changing. So, and what I love about flying is that it is so metaphorical and such a place of learning. And so, for instance, I just I find radio communication really interesting because it differs so much from the communication we have on the ground. And I have I do talk about that, about how, when we're flying, our communication has to be very terse, very short, no emotion, and it's basically like an infant talking. It's like a verb and a noun. Like me down, hungry, sort of inbound for landing. And that's the way we talk, and it works. And the reason we do it is because everything is so important that you have to strip away. And of course, you don't want to step on other people too. But meanwhile, on the ground, I'm doing couples counseling where all we can do is like adjectives, 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 high passion, interrupting, stepping on. Our communication on the ground sucked. And
Yep.
so there was so much to learn. And I remember flying, and I don't fly into towered airports a lot. I love small airports because for years I just didn't do radio communication as a paraglider. And as a big and they no airports, very few airports would allow trikes when I first started.
Okay.
So I was just like talking to other pilots, which I am very good at. But when it comes to towered communication, I'm one of those like kind of rusty people.
Yeah.
And I'm not psyched about that. And I have been, getting better. But what I love and also am intimidated by is the way, you have to repeat, of course, everybody listening knows this, that you repeat what tower tells you because tower needs to know that you've heard them and that you understand the important points. And that's the same in couples counseling. I mean, the therapist will sit there and say, "Now you say your side of the story and you can't interrupt." And then you repeat it
Right.
to show you've understood. And that really struck me. That sort of mirroring and how I was trying to get better at towered airports, and I was really not doing well on communication on the ground.
That is fascinating. Yeah, so tell me more. I mean, so you decided to weave this relationship into this story about flying. That's what you're claiming with me right now.
Yeah,
Um, so
because the truth was I became obsessed with flying a gyro as my marriage was ending. And that was so obvious to me what was going on. Like, I wanted to get better at something because I was really not doing well at this on the ground. And it was a control issue, Liz. If I could control this little yellow, odd looking machine, maybe I could feel control on the ground. But of course, flying is also about non control, like uncontrol, just the huge sky, the weather, all these factors that we, at least for me as a tiny pilot in an open cockpit, you feel so small and you feel so sort of, am you know, fetal. It's just like of course, you're a skilled pilot and you've made decisions, but when you're up there, bundled up in 7 layers with a balaclava on because it's so freaking cold over the Sierras, then you feel tiny, and I wanted that too. So it was a funny little mix of things that the gyro was offering me. in order to get over what was going on.
Yeah, you do a really good job. I'll mention that you incorporate some really great quotes from some of my favorite writers in aviation in this book, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, um, who's our Jonathan Livingston Seagull author, Bach, Richard Bach. Just love those mentions in there, and you do a really good job of kind of talking about the wonder of it. And I think I had I've seen a lot of really spectacular views in my own flying experience, but there's one chapter that you're talking about being on the ground up in Alaska, working Denali, I think, and then getting airborne and just thinking like, oh, you can go help on this search case or whatever and find a down plane, no problem. You have really good eyesight. And then getting
Hearing
airborne,
you say, I was
like,
so proud. I was like, they said, "Oh, we're not gonna find this plane." I was like, "Oh, what do you mean? I have really good eyesight."
yeah.
Like,
And then you're like,
he's like,
and you're because you're like, you have the perspective of, something holding a flashlight at the ground level. You can see this little circle that you're standing in, but then you get up to altitude and you're like, I had that experience this summer. My girlfriend lives in Juneau. She invited me up to go flying with her, and we had actually flown, so I already was like grasping how spectacular everything was there. But one evening she flew me over the glacier. And I don't know what I thought when I thought of a glacier. I thought of an ice mountain, right? A single ice mountain. No, this up north of Juneau is just this vast emptiness, stunning, huge ice field that goes on for I think 70 miles or something. And I've never felt smaller in my life than when I saw that this past summer. I was like, it just took my breath away. I was crying. I couldn't help it. Like, it was absolutely stunning. So you do a really good job of describing that.
"Oh, good." Yeah, no, I actually and I feel that a lot. I mean, I feel that when I've done some, longer cross countries that take multiple days, many airports. We stop as an open cockpit pilot, I stop every hour and a half to sort of reorient from the
Yeah,
in the sun, and, just flying over Monument Valley, and we can fly pretty low. I mean, obviously within the rules, but we can fly very low, just like helicopter pilots, and, just the landscape just make I mean, I tear up, you know? I yeah, probably cried more in my gyrocopter, just a little tear because it's everything's so beautiful.
it's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
really
I
moving.
talk about the overview effect, which is
Yes,
what
I
most
loved
people
that
know about, but I as one of the reasons why, we should, everybody should start getting into a plane and looking down and being awed by that view, just being awed that we could be up there and, um, for one, and being awed at the land. I mean, we live in an incredibly beautiful country.
for
Um,
sure. Especially out there yeah, well, everywhere, but out there in California for sure is really beautiful. So, what do you hope? What were you trying to achieve with this book, and what do you hope people take away from it?
mean, I want non-pilots to be, wide-eyed about flight, and I'm not sure why. I mean, partly I hear so many people who are afraid of flight, and they're afraid to get on a passenger plane, and, I understand the passenger planes, I don't like passenger it's not that I'm scared, it's just I don't like they're cramped, they're noisy, it's uncomfortable, um but still, it's amazing that we can get 400 people into the air. It's just unbelievable, and then you can, like, eat your peanuts up there. I mean, it's, fascinating, and I think we've lost sight of that. And so I do and I have been also too, I think fear of anything, like, big fear of anything is I think someone who's tried to practice bravery a lot I want I want to address that. And I've been told by people who have read this, who are afraid of flying, that this has changed the way they look at flying. I mean, they're
Oh,
willing to look at sort of the wonder of it as opposed to go deep into how scared they are.
Interesting.
And the wonder is the physics too, how they can get in the air. So and they've told me that they think about that now when they fly. So that was, that's I think what I really one of the things that I wanted to do.
So what do you want people to learn from your relationship, or what are you offering people there from sharing? You don't get really deep into the relationship, you just kind of at least, I haven't read it word for word yet, so but I see you kind of going into, tying a metaphor into, the relationship and the communications, just like you were talking about how well, how you could do that well in the plane, but not do it well in therapy, but, like, what do you want people to take away from that part of that story?
That's a great question, Liz. Thank you for asking that. Well, I think they will relate because this isn't about like, oh, my terrible marriage. My marriage was amazing, and Wendy's amazing, and we are family and always will be. And I do not um, cotton to this thing about failed marriages. I just don't. My marriage was not a failure. It's over, but it's not a failure. I learned so much, and thank goodness for Wendy. She made me better. Hopefully, I did the same for her. So it's not about. There aren't very many specifics where I'm trying to win an argument or a fight and let everyone see how I was wrong, because neither of us were wrong. It's really about the generalities of relationships, human relationships, and I think and what happens when they start to dissolve. That love starts to dissolve. Um, and I think people can relate to that. It's just about relating. I'm not somebody who oh gosh, I mean, I guess I've written books that are prescriptive, but I don't think of my someone who someone who gives advice, but maybe I do. Write to me if you think I give you advice and I shouldn't, but so it's not really about advising. I think it's just about it's just about the human condition, which I'm sort of always working on in my books.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to read the other ones, but it feels like you're working through it in the book. And sometimes just watching how somebody approaches working through something can be instructive, or it can make you not feel alone if you're going through that thing, you know, to know that other people have been through it and that they've survived, that they've come out on the other side. So how are you doing? How are you?
Great. Thank you. I wanted to say too that I think I had written a lot about awe in Tough Broad because awe, this feeling that you get in the face of something bigger than you, mostly used to be used for religious reasons, but now is very much, first of all, in the science, there've been a lot of studies about awe. But I think we live in a world of anti-awe where we are mostly about sort of computers and awe is about the sort of being amazed at something more powerful, more wonderful, more mysterious. And now everything's sort of not mysterious, and we're supposedly in control with our phones and our computers. And so I think we're losing this idea of awe, and it's actually really good for us. And there's a lot of science in Tough Broad about this, how it's good for us physiologically. It's good for us on a perspective level. It makes us more compassionate, and it makes us have a better sense of who we are in the world, in relation to the world. And I think these are all the things I needed as I was grieving the descent of my marriage. And I think flight offers that. And so I had already been steeped in a lot of studies about awe and how going outside in Tough Broad was really the fastest way to get awestruck is to look at a big night sky
Yeah,
or a tiny flower. But also to fly an open cockpit gyrocopter is a way to get awe, and that is a healing thing, and something we all need. So it was a way to also write about that.
that's really cool. Well, I'm gonna do it. Whether I'm in need of healing, or just in need of inspiration, it's on my list of things to do, and I'm grateful
Do
for
a
your
gyro
description.
or you'll
Gyro, yeah,
oh, good, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
you'll love it, it'll be easy for you. Like, flying has always been really hard for me. When I learned to fly as a kid, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I mean, of course, we didn't have GPS back then, and
Yeah.
it was and so it's always I'm not like a natural talent at all, but, you'll probably take to flying gyros.
Well, I have hundreds of hours using my body to do something similar. So that's the only reason. Let me assure you, not everything comes easily to me. Kiteboarding, for example, because I was never a snowboarder or a surfer myself. So
Mhm.
or even a skateboarder. I was a figure skater, but that sideward motion was unnatural to me to be managing a board on a knife edge in the water and managing a kite over your head. So it took me more hours to learn that.
Yay,
And
so you're a
and
kiteboarder. That's cool.
yeah, and but that whole journey for me is fascinating, and I see you doing really well with it, like, talking about sort of the proprioception, like, writing about learning something new, writing about the physical feeling of it. Those are all things that fascinate me, and they're kinda, like, up my alley.
Oh,
Um
well, yeah, I mean, and I also went from a trike, which is exactly opposite than fixed wing controls. Um, 'Cause okay, you the controls are exactly opposite. So as soon as I started flying a gyro, which was really hard for me because my muscle memory was
Yeah,
exactly the opposite.
yep,
Never flew a trike again because I c
'cause you
I
yeah.
I couldn't do my memory
Yeah, I've
I could
been
probably
having
do it now that I'm I have like 500 hours in a gyro, so I can
Oh, this is a thing. I mean, like, being proficient at something and then that negative transfer of your automatic responses, especially as you get closer to the ground and things get more critical. So for me, like, my big thing that I did this past year was I got my tail wheel and I
congratulations. That's
thank you.
hard, I heard.
It was it well, they say that if you take a helicopter pilot and an airline pilot and you teach both of them and they're skilled in that thing, it's probably the helicopter pilot's gonna do better in the tail wheel just because you're used to using your rudders a lot. And so it wasn't that difficult to learn, but there is a definite, specific profile, just like there's a profile for coming into a hover and a helicopter, there's a profile for landing a Cessna or, a tricycle gear aircraft, and then there's a profile for landing a glider, which is a sailplane, which is a critical very critical, and so, the thing that I do most often is I go soaring with my friend here, but not often enough to maintain any proficiency, and so when I came back from the tail wheel and he was like, "Do you wanna land?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm not gonna land today just because I have been repeating this other motion." So, no, it's a thing for sure that you gotta get proficient at that. So, I'm excited about trying all that. Before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit because you have so many books published. Just a little bit about publishing, writing, and publishing.
Yes?
So you said that you're a writer, and that's what you're good at. How did you get good at writing?
It's pretty boring. I got good at writing by writing and reading. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the truth. We think we can write because we do write a lot in our everyday lives. It's just people. But the truth is to tell a story, well is very difficult because you have to keep, the tension and you have to keep somebody wanting to turn the page. And that was not something that I knew how to do initially. How does someone turn the page? Um, and it again, I think it just comes by practice. I had a really good, uh one thing I'm really good at these days is, not judging myself as I write, and I think I got good at that by this exercise I read about in one of Natalie Goldberg's books. I highly recommend Wild Mind. I mean, it's been years, I think she wrote it in the '70s, but it's an exercise where you just set your clock for 10 minutes, and there's some rules, and the rules are you are not allowed to stop your fingers from moving, whether it's a typing or a pencil. and you're not allowed to go back. So you're not allowed to backspace or cross out. So, and then you pick maybe a sentence or, that's, you just pick the sun rose this morning, and then you just go for 10 minutes. And again, not allowed to stop physically. But what that does is it means that you're not allowed to judge because
Mhm,
yes, what you just wrote made no sense at all. Who cares? You're doing the
mhm.
rules are not that you have to write something good. The rules are that you cannot stop writing and you cannot erase. And what that teaches your brain is to not judge, to just keep writing. And I did that exercise for many years. And I think that I have a lot of forward progress. I'm not one of those writers who yet, I mean, and I don't want to say never but I'm able now to just write something bad. Just write it because if you're not finishing it, it's definitely not going to get out in the world. And then, do the editing after, do the judging after, or let someone else do the judging. Let your
Yeah.
editor do the judging.
I
Um,
wanna I wanna pull I'm gonna pull something out, because here's a little trick that, I use for this kind of idea.
Great.
Okay, so I wanted a tool that I could do generative writing on and not be tempted to go, like, stop what I was doing and go back and, like I have a habit of, I would call it navel gazing or like, maybe kind of narcissistically, like, admiring my own work while I'm writing it. I'll go back and I'll read a paragraph, and then I'm
Totally.
like, "Oh, that was really good." And then I'll go back and I'll go, let me go read that again because that was really good." And I'm just gonna read it one more time. I know I gotta do more, but, like, I just
Yeah.
gotta read this.
Pat
I do this
yourself on the back.
all the time with all of my stuff. It's
Good.
it's so stupid, and I recognize
No,
that it is like, if you at least have the self-awareness to know what the things that are holding you back, like, okay, if you pick up your phone and you go on Instagram, you better set a timer so you don't get, for me, it's like going back and admiring my stuff. It's
I love it.
I'm
Well, at
confessing
least
that.
that's like not going back and berating yourself over your stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that comes later.
Yeah.
That comes the next day when I'm like, "Ooh, why did I
Well,
think
what do
that
you
was so
do
good?"
about that then? What do you
But
do?
so
So
what I also, because I lived in South Florida when I was in my graduate program, for writing, and I like to sit outside and work, and it's really hard to see on a screen. And I discovered this old tool right here. This is called a Neo 2, and it is a typing tool that is powered by a couple of, I want to say, like, uh, AAA or double A batteries. And, it's a tool that they used to use in schools, so it's extremely durable, and it has this, whatever the screen is that's not a computer screen, so it doesn't reflect, like, you can still see it in the sun, and you only can see 3 or 4 lines of what you write, and you type in here, there are different, projects, files that you can set up, and you type, 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 and then what you do is you take a USB cord and you hook it up to your computer and you hit send, and all of the stuff that you wrote on here will type out on your screen. But this is a tool that I use for generative creative writing to prevent myself from, backspace or whatever. And, like, if I'm going to do a
looking
nano.
back on your stuff because it only allows you 3 sentences.
Yeah, yeah, so you're not
I
it's a
love
pain in
it.
the butt to scroll up and see. So, yeah, that's just one little trick that I use to
Love it.
accomplish
Great.
the thing that you're talking about of just, like, flow writing. Okay, so that's one of your tricks about how you got good at writing. Okay, and then so tell me about publishing. Tell me, how did you get your first book published? Did you get an agent? And then tell me about this book.
So, like most of the things I've done in my life, I look for a niche where I can be good at something because nobody else is there. One of the things when I was young is I was a luger. I don't know if you
A
the
luge.
the
Yeah.
winter sport of luge, which at the
You
time
lay down you lay down on the ice? Is it just your body, or do you have a thing that you're in?
no, you're on a sled.
You're on a sled, okay.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to be an Olympian. So, you pick something like the luge and you can do it because there was only 12 women in America doing it at the time.
Okay,
So,
okay.
or yeah, so it was very few because yeah, within a couple months, I actually competed in the nationals and I was in the top. 11. I was 11th out of 12. I actually would crash all the time, but if you're in the top 11, that's still pretty good in the United States.
Love it.
I actually yeah, so I was a loser. So that's my philosophy is like, "Oh, you're not gonna be great at anything, but you could find something no one else really wants to do and be okay at it."
That's what I'm doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there
me
we go.
right here. Yeah.
I mean, and, so, no one else had written a book from the perspective of a woman about being a firefighter because there were hardly any female firefighters.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote that book, it was, I mean, it's not a terrible book at all. It's interesting, but I actually rewrote the original in 2011 because I just couldn't live with, like, the sort of amateur writing that I had done. It was fine. I had an amazing editor, but it did come out in 1997. That was my first book because, again, not because I'm an incredible writer, but because I had a story that no one else.
Right. So did you go through an agent to get it published?
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
got an agent. Yeah, I got an agent, you know, mostly through kind of word of mouth. It was a weird, like, friend of a friend got told I was writing this or I had written, uh, yeah, and it was actually fiction at first, but the, publishing industry really pressured me to do nonfiction. But I was still in the firehouse, but I did do nonfiction, I just changed everybody's names.
I see, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so then you had all these other books. Did you stay with the same agent? How did that work out?
Yeah, so I had a different agent for my novel,
Mhm.
and I got a real sense of how being introduced was got me a much quicker answer. I slush piled one agent. And she did get back to me, but it was 6 weeks later, and she was like, "Oh my god, oh, we just read it. Are you still available?" I was like, "I am no longer available, but thank you for showing me that you read the slush pile." She goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we read everything in the slush pile," which was very heartening. Yeah. And then honestly, I published a novel and I couldn't get anything published after that. It was crazy. I went through this period where I would kind of walk around fairly catatonic in the halls of my office where a lot of other writers were also working, and they would have to say, "You got this. You got this. Don't stop writing. Don't stop writing." And I was lucky to be a writer who had published 2 books, so I knew that it was possible. So I really feel for writers who can't get their first book published because I think that is where you really have to just knuckle down. I've heard amazing stories, that it takes 150 queries to agents until they finally get one, and then their book is a smash hit. It's just hard, and, I I just couldn't publish anything, and then I published Lost Cat, which was the illustrated book that I did with my, then wife, who which was an odd book, and I think the only reason Bloomsbury took it is because they owed something to my agent. I went back to my agent from Fighting Fire, and I have a feeling that my agent is pretty high powered. She had a lot of writers that I think they wanted, and so they're like, "Sure, we'll publish it." I don't know, maybe that's not true, but it was such a weird book. I mean, it did very well. It's, cat people love Lost Cat, and it's a great book, but it's an illustrated book for adults. It's just very
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and believe me, I've had times where I could not get anything published, and it's taken a lot of, uh, I don't know what, dumbness or stubbornness or just belief or faith, to keep writing. So I have a lot of half books. I've published 8 books, and I feel and they have all been with big New York publishers, and I feel very lucky about that. But I also have, books that I have not published, full books, 2 full novels that did the rounds. Nope, so that it's you really learn. Luckily, my twin sister really helped me because as an actress, she's getting rejected all the time. They go on auditions all the time. She's done 100 movies, lots of TV movies. She's been incredibly successful, but she gets rejections. And she said, "When I get a rejection, I just tell myself Well, they wanted a blonde, and I'm not blonde. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
could not have fit that category.
Right.
So keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing, and so that gave me some gumption, yeah.
Are there any of those books that haven't been published yet that you feel strongly enough about that you would usher them into the world another way outside of traditional publishing?
No, I think most of my books that haven't been published aren't good enough. I
Okay.
think that, I think sometimes that's not true. The gatekeepers are wrong, but I think in my case, no, they just weren't good enough.
Okay.
So probably not. Uh,
All right.
it's the writing life is really rewarding because I get to write about things that I want to live, like flying.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also, it can be very lonely. No one's waiting for you to, I'm not John Grisham. No one's waiting for my next book
Right.
to
Right.
say. Maybe some reader out there is going to be like, "No, I am Caroline," and I think of that reader, whoever he or she is. Um, but um, but I think so. I have a writing community, a very strong one. The Writers Grotto has it started with very few, 9 of us, and now it's hundreds of us. But of those original 9, through the years, so many people have become incredible writers, really with bestsellers and national book awards and magazine awards. And I really do think, of course, they're talented, but there's a lot of talent out there. But it's the community, that sort of magic that happens
Yeah.
when people get together and they take a vow of support. They're not gonna there's no there's I mean, you might feel jealous, I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's you're not that's not the thing at the grotto is support and, learning from each other, and that's just without the grotto, I would not be a writer for sure
That's
today.
fascinating. That is fascinating. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before you finish this off with a little reading?
No, I think that's, I don't know, is there anything else? No, because this is
No,
my
I
first
think so.
interview, so you're teaching me.
Well, we'll get into the details of the launch and everything at after the reading so we can leave people with that. But yeah, what do you have for us?
I'll do, just a quick reading just so that people
Sounds
get a
good.
sense of the voice, and this is the 2nd chapter. The 1st it does begin again with an emergency landing I had to make, so that's where I asked the question, "Why? Why do we fly?"
Yeah.
My family asks that, my friends ask that after incidences like that, and I ask that. So, anyway, this is the 2nd chapter. The year that my marriage begins to fray in earnest, I become obsessed with flight. I'm not a new pilot. I've been flying various aircraft all my life. I've always liked to be aloft, but I am not consumed with it. Not yet. Then, at 58 years old, I find myself racking up the flying hours in ways I never had with the Cessna that I learned when I was just 20, the paraglider I picked up in my 30s, and that dastardly motorized hang glider that I piloted from my 40s onward. This ardor is new. I begin to fly a gyrocopter. The reasons for this aren't all mysterious. It's easier to learn a landing than a human heart. It's easier to check the oil and look for the fill line. You add oil or not. When the weather is bad, you don't have to stick it out. You close the hangar door and leave. You'll fly another day. But still, it's a strange decision. My heart has a hole that needs filling, and I decide to fill it with a strange looking piece of metal that resembles a tiny helicopter. The hard edges and wires and rotors shouldn't have fit, for one. Pilots are often intrigued with the mechanical. They love the bright aluminum and wires and baffles and spark plugs, the additions that promise high speeds and bigger numbers. But not me. I have no engineering mind, have little in common with those who tinker with their plane to make it snazzier. I don't tinker at all. Sometimes I rue the fact that I have to be held up by a structure of any sort and wish I could just fly like the birds. But my marriage is in trouble and I don't know how to fix it, but I can get better at flying, and so that is what I do. And I pick a gyrocopter to do it in.
I love it. So when is this book coming out?
It comes out February 24th.
Okay. And what do you want from us in advance of the launch? Where can we you want us to pre-order
Well,
it on
pre-ordering
Amazon?
helps a book so much
Right.
because it indicates you'd be surprised, like, how a publisher just changes their mind, like, "Ooh, we're gonna put more money into that," PR. Well, because they see the sales, because that's what happened with Gutsy Girl. I mean, they were completely taken off guard when it became a New York Times bestseller in its first week, and so they suddenly I was, like, feted in ways that I had never been feted by my publisher before. I mean, I love my publisher, Bloomsbury, but, so they do, they keep an eye on all that. So, yeah, I mean,
Right.
pre-orders would be amazing, would be such a great, gift to me, and it can be pre-ordered at your local independent or whatever you use, as,
You can use my website, thebookshop.org links
Oh,
and
yeah,
pre-order it
great, thank you
there.
for that, yeah.
That way you're helping our author, Caroline, and you're helping your local you can pick your local independent bookstore, and you're helping me because I get a much higher percentage on bookshop.org sales than I do on Amazon. Not that I make any money doing this, I promise you I don't, but it's the principle of the thing.
No,
So,
we wanna support you too, Liz.
thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Well, this has been amazing. I'm so excited to know you. I'm so grateful. This is just the beginning. You're now I'm counting you as one of my many, many wonderful friends in this community. And I look forward to hopefully introducing you to other women, whether it's through the book club or whether we can get
Oh,
you to come
Liz,
out.
I'm so honored to be part of the book club. I can't even tell you. I mean, I saw Becky was right before me who
Yes.
blurbed the book. Becky's been
I saw that. Yes.
wonderful. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, and, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
we'll
people
feel
will like it. It's definitely different, and I guess it's all about mostly about weird experimental aircraft, so
yeah, it's really cool. We're really excited about this. Well, Caroline, all the best to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in April during the book club discussion. If you can make it with us, and in between then,
definitely gonna make it. Yeah,
I
for
hope you have
sure.
a great book launch.
Yay, thank you so much, Liz. Thank you for this. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
And here I am, I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to sail.